morning. So, after I groan on my way down, we're gonna do a yin-yang practice. Now the yin for today is gonna be a little bit abbreviated, and we're gonna basically do a child's pose and a sphinx with a little half frog thrown in there. So that'll be our yin. And then we're gonna do a flowing section that is sort of hands-free. So it'll be a vinyasa in that the poses kind of all link together and there's a flow to it. But I thought it would be nice to do a vinyasa practice to kind of have on the record books a little bit, that you don't, if you're having a sore wrist or you've got a sore shoulder or an elbow is bothering you, this is a vinyasa practice you could probably do okay with. And then the yin, you might have to weight distribute in a different way for the yin based on which one of those things is a culprit. But in any case, that's essentially my notion for today. So we're going to begin in a child's pose, and we'll stay there for a few minutes, 3 to 4 minutes or so. So if child's pose is not your jam, you can substitute something else, like a folded butterfly pose, where you could lie down on your back, and then you just join us for the second half of it. Good morning. So I like my knees a little wide, and if I'm gonna stay in child's pose for a while, I love having a little pillow, because it just evens out the pressure a little bit and takes a little bit off, of the hips and knees for me, so I can kind of lean my weight a little more forward and then slowly kind of inch back to give more weight to the knees and the hips as I go. And it does require that I turn my head to one side, so I'm going to do this for a couple minutes and then I'll switch it. So when I hold a pose like this, I'm not necessarily staying stock still. I'm not trying to hold myself still. I'm just remaining present in the pose. But I love to do like a little sort of side-to-side wobble from time to time, or I'll gently lengthen out the top of my ankle joint so that hanging out here becomes a little bit mobile, but not radically so. I try not to be fidgety if I can help it. Uh-oh. The camera might jiggle. People are trying to interrupt my situation. Hopefully they won't knock it all the way over. Sometimes the furry coworkers are not particularly conscientious. All right, there's about a halfway point. We're gonna stay for a few more breaths. Alrighty. So right before I leave this child's pose, I'm just going to give myself a little stretch back and then just a little side bend on each side for a couple breaths. You don't have to do this part. If you're ready to get out of here, you can come out. Just taking advantage of this opportunity. Oh, because it feels nice. Okay, so then I'm going to let myself come all the way forward. And before I do a Sphinx, I'm just going to stack my arms and rest my forehead and then do some little windshield wipery things to just loosen up the hips, the knees. Oh. Some little ankle circles feel nice while you're at it. And then we're going to come to a Sphinx. Now, you can stay with the crocodile. Just rest your forehead on your arms or your chin if you prefer. Or you can come up so that the elbows are on the ground. And then with the elbows on the ground, I like my elbow a little bit forward of my shoulder and slightly more narrow. That makes my shoulder relax the best. It doesn't feel like the bones or the shoulders want to hunch up toward my ears. They feel relatively stable, so I go with that one. Now, that said, you might find it a different story. And we're going to stay here for like a minute or so, and then we're going to add the little frogs on. And you can shift your upper body. You don't have to keep it here with this particular shape. Now, some people have a different lumbar shape than I do, so that's enough for me. But some people may want to prop up on their hands and do more of a seal. And you're welcome to do that if that's better for your low back, shoulders, arms, whatever you may have going on. We'll just breathe nice and deep and smooth. So I'm going to do 2 more breaths, and then I'm going to take one leg into the frog. Now, the frog in this case, in this kind of yin world, is a prone position, so down on the belly, where the goal is to try to get to kind of the hip, the inner thigh, the groin, that kind of area. When we do the half part, there's an opportunity to also do the quads on the spare leg. So I'm going to do that as well. So to do that, for me, it helps to have a strap. But you could reach back and grab a hold of the foot with your hand. So I'm going to do my left leg in a frog first. So I'm going to take the right one and just put a strap around my foot. And then pull it over my shoulder. And that'll give me the option of doing this little extra bit. Okay. So the left leg's going to come out, and you kind of roll to the right and stick that left leg up. And some people may find they want the leg higher, they want the foot kicked out more or tucked in more, or you want the leg lower. So you're just going to kind of figure this out. The situation that we're aiming for is to get as level as possible given the shape of our hip sockets. So however level that's going to be. And for some people it'll be a lot level, and for some of us not level at all. And then I can bring this foot in. Oh, let me get the buckle kind of turned around so it's not pinching me. There we go. I can bring this foot in and just kind of hang onto it as I go. Now I'm going to use this pillow and go into sort of more of that crocodile shape, where I'm going to kind of let myself rest on my forehead. And we'll stay here for about 3 minutes. So again, you can let go of the leg that you're holding onto, or hold that foot with your hand. Like I would reach back with my left hand and hold the right one if I wanted to. I like the strap better because it's just a little more relaxed for my shoulders. And then I can kind of hold this simultaneous release of the quad. So it's almost like I took the half saddle and turned it upside down. So So we're kind of doing two poses at once. I'm trying to pay attention as I'm hanging out here to kind of, how much can I relax into the left hip, which is the one doing the frog, and how much can I relax the top of my right thigh. So those are the places where the pose is a little spicier, although admittedly the frog for me is not a particularly spicy pose. I feel sensation nonetheless in my hip, particularly close to the socket. So we're going to stay for another minute or so. But the context here with the yin is that I'm holding a shape, but then trying to relax around it. So it's a little bit, on the surface it seems a little bit contradictory, but I think, I hope it makes sense. That we can be holding a shape that has a strong sensation and still try to relax around it. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And that for me is the task of yin, right? Is to consciously relax, because the tendency for my body when I get into shapes that are a little spicy is to tighten up. So I'm trying to work with that notion of like, that's the tendency, can I interrupt that? Some days are easier than others. So we're going to take about 3 more breaths and then we'll switch. So I'm going to start with this guy. Just inhale one more time. And then I'm going to roll to my long side and unfrog that leg. And then for just a moment, I'm going to pause for a second. And just feel what happened. So one of the things that's interesting to me is just kind of what are the sensations. So on the left side, the sensation is much closer to my hip, and it feels just like the front of the hip is a little softer. There's a little softness around the glute. Some really interesting things happen with the frog. They're subtle, but I like them. Now on my right side, where I had, for me, the tightest place, which is the top of my thigh, the quads, in the stretch, that feels very different, quite melty, a little longer, pleasant, but different sensation. So I'm just giving that a second to sort of dissipate, and then I'm going to do the other side. So first thing I'm going to do is lasso my right foot, so that I've got, I've got it in the strap. Okay. And then, or left foot rather, my left foot, there it is. Left and right. Okay, I'm going to try to get my buckle turned around here so it's not biting me in the ankle. I might have to wrestle this a little bit more. Hold on. I'm going to need to swing it around. There we go. All right, now I can do the frog on the right side. And before I get too crazy with this left side, I'm going to try to get the right side just right. Oh. Okay. And so just start out nice and slow and feel my way in so I get just the right amount of sensation. And then we're going to hang out for a few minutes. Again, I don't want to go to the point where I can't relax. So I'm feeling for that, like I feel this, there's a little bit of sensitivity, there's a little bit of intensity, but I can also, inside of that, I can still relax. If I get to a place where I can't relax anymore, then I try backing off a little bit or adding some extra support. gonna stay for one more minute. So I'm going to take 2 more breaths. And then I'm going to lean into this longer leg side and take that frog leg out of there. Oh, okay. So just pausing for a moment to kind of rinse out. I'm going to go back to child's pose briefly. Now, what we're going to essentially try to do is we're going to try to just tuck our toes and get on our feet. So kind of coming to a squat. If you would prefer to do downward dog, I'm not going to stop you from doing it. It's just, that one can be tricky for wrist and shoulders and elbows. So if they're tender today, another option would be to get yourself onto your feet. So you could do it really hands-free. Or just kind of hands-free, right? So we're just kind of tuck ourselves in here. And keep the weight mostly in the legs. And then turn it into a forward bend in whatever way makes sense. And rinsing things out a little bit here. I'm going to sway a little bit side to side. Just kind of coming through with the knee bent on the side that I'm on. So it's a little less intense on the hamstrings to do it this way. And then coming all the way up. Give yourself a nice big stretch when you get there. And then we'll come to a mountain pose. Now, we're going to pause with the mountain because that'll be our kind of in-between place with each one of these. Just making sure my mat will be nice and sticky and that my hair will not fall down. All right, so mountain pose. Turn your toes forward, about hips distance apart. Some people like their toes touching, that's fine. I like a little bit wider base. Let the kind of sensation of the pelvis come to neutral, so it doesn't feel like you're tucking under, nor is it jutting forward. We're just looking for the most neutral we can get. It feels like there might be a little bit of core action holding that up, but not too much. We're not locking out the knees. We're letting the shoulders relax down the back, so the shoulders aren't hunching forward or creating any additional curve in the upper back. It's there, normal. We're just not thrusting the rib cage forward, nor are we crowding forward. And then let your head sort of float a little bit above the whole thing. So there's a sense of length to the spine. Put the weight on your feet pretty evenly. And then just take a moment and feel this mountain pose. Just in general, what does it feel like to be in this pose? Left to right, top to bottom, front to back. Take a nice big stretch up. I've got to avoid my plants, but you might be able to swing your arms out. I'm going to take my left hand to my side waist and then reach over with the right side. I'm not pushing too hard, but giving myself a little bit of space there. I'm going to pick this left leg up and just for a moment hover, and then one more. Then we're gonna step this back. Now I'm gonna aim for a warrior one. So it's a little bit like high lunge keeps me pointing forward. I've got a little bit of a diagonal. Now the ankle joint flexibility here will matter. So some ankles have a lot of range of motion and you can really turn the toes in, and then the hip can come around a little bit more. But if you're like me and your ankle joint is only so flexible, the hip is gonna point out of the diagonal. We're just gonna rotate the ribs a little bit forward. So taking the arms up, bringing them back, pushing forward. Oh, let's do this 3 times, one more time. And then we're gonna straighten out the front leg and fold. Now this is where blocks might come in handy if the floor feels like it's a little far away. And then we'll bend the knee and straighten it back out. I'm going to do that a couple times. Bend the knee, straighten it back out. One more. All right, so then holding steady there. Now, if I keep my torso a little higher and my leg a little straighter, for me that evens the stretch all the way out. If I fold too far forward, I'll feel it at the sit bone. If I bend my knee too much and fold forward, sometimes that's better, sometimes that loads the sit bones. So you just have to experiment a little bit. Like, what's the better stretch today? I'm anchoring my left heel into the ground, so I'm stretching my calf muscles, which for me is the spicier part right now. So I'm gonna take one more breath with that. Excellent. Now we're gonna turn this into a balancing pose with a twist. So I'm gonna leave my block for my left hand. You could also put your fingertips on the floor. We're gonna keep the weight in the right leg, and the left arm is here for support. Oh, as I rotate a little bit to the right there, reaching back through that left leg, trying to keep the weight nicely distributed on that right leg. So everything else is lighter. And then I'm gonna bring this leg into the belly, curl up, put the foot down, come up halfway. Exhale, fold. Come all the way up to standing, nice big stretch. Ooh, come back to mountain pose. And so feeling right side, left side now with this mountain pose. Is there any difference in the way the two sides of your body feel? There may not be, but there might be. Nice big breath, arms come up. Right hand to the side waist, and we're not pushing hard, we're just placing that there. So that sort of sense of folding has that little extra support. Coming back to the middle, I'm gonna pick this right leg up and hover for a moment. 2 more breaths. And then stepping back into warrior one, or I'm gonna get as close as I can and then fix it. And then the elbows come back, and push forward. And the arms as high as they'll go, elbows back, push forward, one more. All right, so then we're gonna fold forward. Again, you can use yoga blocks or a piece of furniture, whatever you've got on hand to give you a little extra support. Okay, so I'm gonna bend the leg and then straighten it out. I'm just feeling for what is the range of that stretch. Where does it seem like it's just right versus too sharp on that one little bony attachment point at the sit bone. And then hold and steady. Do 2 more breaths. Okay, so now we're going to go for this balancing half moon with a twist. So I'm going to put the right hand a little bit further forward than the left foot. So I've got about a foot or so up front. I'm going to try to center my weight on this left leg and then twist to the left. Reach out nice and long. Nice strong leg. Again, keeping most of the weight right there on that leg and hip. Oh, and seeing, oh, how much room can I make for myself? And then I'm gonna bring this right knee in, place it down, come up halfway, exhale and fold. And then we're gonna come all the way up to standing, give it a big stretch. Oh. And then find that mountain pose. And feel where it landed you. So this is my favorite part, right? Is I've done both sides, and I'm on the mountain pose where both sides have been done. And is there an overall different quality to the way I experience my body? And I usually feel a little bit more energized, a little bit more alive. Not every day, but most often. Just as a little more of like a tingle. Not, you know, not a tingle in the way that like my foot's falling asleep or anything, but just kind of a nice feeling. Okay, effervescent. So I'm gonna shift my weight into my right leg, and the left leg I'm gonna bring into a tree pose. So you can have your tree down nice and low where all you're doing is leaning your ankle or your heel against your ankle or your calf, shin, depending on where you've angled it. Or you could bring the foot up just below the knee, so it's kind of cupping on the calf muscle. Or you can skip over the knee and bring it all the way up onto the thigh. So you can pick any of those, right? Just choose the one you think is going to be best for you. I usually go for right in the middle there. Although admittedly, for me it's a much more stable pose if my foot's on my thigh. I like the challenge of it not being up there. And it's easier on my left knee. Oh. So some days I have really good balance and some days are a little more tricky. Today's a tricky day. So what happens when you have a tricky day is you just keep coming back. Ooh, last 2 breaths. And then we're going to pick this guy up and step back. And this time we're going to wind up in a warrior 2. So, difference between the warrior 1 and the warrior 2 is I'm not worried about any diagonal, just I'm embracing the diagonal. And I'm letting my chest turn more in line with the hips, right on. Now there's a danger with this where I try to square the hip forward. Because of the shape of hip sockets, it can drag the front knee forward. So allow the legs to go where they go. The hips might still be at a diagonal, and we're just going to follow it, right? So instead of twisting against it, we're following the diagonal of the hip. And then we're going to do these little side angle, triangle, warrior 2, reverse warrior flow. So coming back in, we're going to do them a little bit on the quicker side first, about 3 rounds or so. Oh. And then we're going to hang out with each pose for a bit. Ooh. unless you fall over first. All right, so let's hang out with our reverse warrior for a couple breaths. So again, there's a tendency for this to collapse inward. So I'm going to rotate my ribs so it's a more comfortable position. Might be more this way, might be more that way. Just find the rib position that doesn't feel uncomfortable here in the side waist. Then I'm coming back to that warrior 2. You can have your palms down. Sometimes I prefer the palms up. Like notice that tendency to move forward or back. Then we're going to come to our friend, the side angle pose. Maybe it's your friend. I'm not leaning heavy on this arm. I'm just using it for balance so I can stretch this side. And then we're going to come to our, excuse me, friend, the triangle pose. If I can speak today. Take this into a balancing half moon. So that one we did before was a twisting one. This one we're going to do more straight on. So I'm going to keep the weight in my right leg, left leg's coming up and trying to hold steady there. And again, I'm doing very little weight on my hand. It's here for balance so that I can explore that balance with this leg. Good, one more. And And then we're going to bring the knee in and put the foot down. Kind of find that mountain pose with the feet. Come up halfway. Exhale, fold. Come all the way up to standing. Nice big stretch. And then find that shape again. So it's kind of inviting ourselves to notice. Now I would swear that my right shoulder is in a different place than my left shoulder, which is interesting to me because I've not really done a lot with the shoulders except for the side angle triangle. So let's see what happens on the other side. So I'm going to shift the weight to the left, bring my right foot into the tree. You can do different arms with your tree, up or prayer or even down. Feels kind of good today. I might stay with that. 3 more breaths. A little more steady on this side than the other, but still not completely steady. Notice the differences for you. All right, so then I'm going to pick this guy up and step back into a reasonably warrior 2-like shape. Adjust it when you get there. And again, I just want to center myself so that everything is aligning with the legs and the pelvis. Then I'm going to do these little flowing between the pose movements. So reverse warrior to warrior 2 to side angle to triangle back to warrior 2 to reverse. Side angle, triangle, one more time there, coming back, and then we'll hold this reverse warrior for a few breaths. Feel the inclination of the legs to kind of buckle or straighten, hold them steady. Coming back to warrior 2. One more breath there. And then transitioning into a side angle. And then transitioning into a triangle. And then we're going to transition into our half moon balance. So taking the right leg in the air, see if we can peel that whole right side up, get light on your left hand, keep the weight right on your leg. One more breath. And then we're going to bring this whole thing together. Find that mountain pose with the feet, fold. Come on halfway. And then we're going to come all the way up to standing. Nice big breath. Return to your mountain pose. And just see where that landed you. My shoulders feel more even. All right, yogis, we're going to do one more sequence, kind of like this, where we're doing a little standing flow. So this one's going to start with your choice of standing balance, right on? So I'm going to try to do a dancer. Now I'm going to use a strap to grab my foot, but you could do this by reaching back again for your foot. So sort of coming back to the territory that we were in with that half frog, half scorpion kind of shape that we did. So if I lose my balance, which is very likely, I'm going to let go of this strap and let my foot catch me. As long as I'm holding it, I'm going to try to stay as stable as I can. And again, you could reach back instead with this hand and hold the foot if you like. one more. All right, so now I'm going to try to step back into a high lunge without losing the balance. Oh, oh. You never know, I might fall down with one of these days, but that wasn't too terrible. I'm still a little wobbly. So I'm going to try to keep the hips nice and steady. We're just going to straighten out the front leg and send the left heel down. And then let ourselves kind of bend that front knee back. And you can even bend the left knee a little bit here if you like. Bring the pelvis a little more upright. So straightening out, sending the heel down. Now for me, this is a really good stretch in the calf muscles, but if you don't love it, you can just stay with the lunge and bend the back knee. Maybe your back knee goes almost to the ground. Mine does not get that far. Straight front leg, sending the heel down here. Maybe falling. Alrighty. Now, I'm going to bring my back foot in so that I'm solidly on the ground, and then I'm going to turn everything sideways. Alright, now one side feels very different than the other, so I'm going to take just a moment and kind of jiggle. Alright, so I'm turning my toes in a notch, and then I'm going to fold forward and feel it. If there's any binding or pinching in the hips or the knees as you fold, you can widen or turn the toes out a little bit. You can widen the legs or bring them in if you like. All right. Now, mostly what I'm trying to do is just let myself fold inward. Keep the feet nicely planted. I'm using these blocks just because it gives me a nice landing pad. You don't have to use them. You can let everything just hang here. In a second, I'm going to rearrange them. Oh. Right this moment, I'm just exploring this wide angle forward bend. Okay, so we're going to take this, kind of meander it a little to the left, meander it a little to the right, and we're going to extend the arms out. So it's almost like a downward dog, but with no weight on the arms. And I like to do this. I'm going to turn my foot to go with it, but I like to do this with my hands up on blocks because it gives me a little bigger room, like a little more room to stretch out the back of the shoulder here. So I've just wandered a little bit to the diagonal on the left side here. My left hamstring is definitely getting more love, but as even as I can distribute that, that's what I'm after. So again, super lightweight on the arms, almost none. And then coming back to the center, bringing that guy around. I'm going to do a little back and forth. And then we'll come around this way. So again, I'm going to turn my foot so it's a little bit more at a diagonal. And then I'm finding this diagonal with my arms. And this side's a little more sensitive, so I'm going to stay just a little higher with my torso. See if I can find just right spot. Let's try a little more knee. All right. So I found a sweet spot that feels like the stretch is distributing across the back of my thigh and not just in that one spot. So now I'm going to pause. Alright, so now I'm coming back to the center. Now, I'm going to heel toe my feet in until I can come up halfway, and then fold, and then come all the way to standing. I'm just kind of touching down a little bit, my forehead, my heart, just to kind of reconnect. And then taking that mountain pose again. Just noticing where that landed me. I know I'm going to do this balancing pose again, so I'm going to go ahead and put the strap around my foot. And then I'm not quite ready to do it, but now when I am ready, I'll be set. So kind of finding like a little bit of a sense, like for me there's quite an asymmetry kind of happening. So just trying to find a sense of balance in my hips as I shift the weight to the left, so I'm not feeling like I'm doing too much hiking up of that hip, if you will. Okay, so then I'm going to try to hold on to this foot. And you might, again, reach back with the right hand to hold the right foot. There's a tendency for me to try to lift my right hip up, so I'm trying to hold that more level, just to see what happens. 2 more breaths. All right, so then I'm going to try to step back into this high lunge. Oh, all right, that didn't go too bad. We'll see how the rest of this goes. Alrighty, so I'm going to try to straighten out the front leg and send my right heel toward the ground. Oh, and then I'm going to bend the front leg and then try to bend the right knee a bit. Okay, straight left leg, right heel toward the ground. Bent left knee, bent right knee. Just a little for me. For you might be bigger. Straighten out both legs, send the heel down on the right. Ooh. Bend that knee, bend the right knee. I'm just trying to pick up my pelvis just a little bit. And then I'm going to come to, as best I can, getting that foot all the way on the floor and then spinning around so I can do this wide angle. Now I'm going to just shake it up a little bit. So I think what I'll do is turn around. Now it might be better to hear me this way, I don't know. You guys tell me later which way the vocal quality is better. Talking at you through my leg space or from the other side. All right, so what I'm going to do is essentially I'm going to try to put my elbows on the floor. Now, my elbows don't want to go all the way to the floor, so I bring the floor up higher by using blocks. I'm just putting my elbows on the blocks, meandering my feet out as wide as they want to go. I want to keep from collapsing into the inner arch, so if the outer edge of your foot lifts, bring your legs in just a little bit. You can turn the toes out a notch. Press the legs into the ground and just try to make your sit bones a little bit wider. And let your neck and head relax if you can. And then I'm going to try to subtly just kind of reach back here and put my forehead on the floor. Well, it's a block, but it's working out. All right, 2 more breaths here. And then I'm going to come out, come back to center, come up halfway, exhale, fold, come all the way to standing, and then find your way into your last mountain pose here. So does this last mountain pose feel any different than the first one did? And by different, it could be better, it could be not better. Just notice what the case is. Oh. Now we're gonna sit down on the mat. We're gonna basically go the same way we did before, which is to say we're gonna squat. And then theoretically, we're just gonna sit right down. I say theoretically because that's not what I'm gonna do, because I can't get quite that close to the ground. But that's the motion. I'm just gonna try to take this down. So first things first, I've got to get myself into a squat. So I'm going to do that part. Send my hips as low as I can. Now, sitting down on the floor is not going to happen directly because this distance is too far. So instead, I'm going to put one leg on the ground, which is not as hands-free. But the other option would be to sort of pile up some blocks. Sit yourself down on the blocks and then kind of take them out one at a time. So that's another way to probably have done that. But here we are, yogis. So from this seated position, we're going to take ourselves into a little bit of a twist. Now, you can do this with the leg, with the one leg up. I'm going to twist left first. Or you can bring this leg all the way around. Okay. My plan is to just simply sit cross-legged with that leg in front because it gives me the most open space, right? And I want my pelvis to mostly stay stable. Now here's the thing. If you have a little sacroiliac joint trickiness, right? So the sacroiliac joint is the joint where the sacrum, which is part of the spine, meets the two wings of the pelvis. And usually it feels sort of like a little 50-cent piece sized wad of discomfort. It can move around, but often, quite often, just right on that sacrum area. So if that's something that you commonly feel when you twist, let your pelvis go with you, and it will take a little bit of that pressure away. I like to try to focus my twist on my upper back. And so for that reason, I mostly leave the pelvis steady. So this is the easiest way for me to do that. So turning, if I get my legs tangled up a little bit more, then it becomes a little more pelvic oriented. And I'm just focusing on this upper back. So I've spun myself around about as far as I can go. I can start to feel the inclination of my right hip to go forward to help me out. So I'm just gonna back off a little bit, and that's where I'm gonna hang out for now. So I'm gonna let this arm just kind of hang where it is, and this arm kind of find a home somewhere back here. And then sit up taller. I'm not trying to anchor my right hip to the floor, but I'm trying to stay kind of mostly in this middle back rib cage area with my twist. I'm not even doing that much with my neck yet. So I'm waiting for there to kind of be the sense that it's ready to let go a little. Okay, so now I can spin this upper back without my hip coming just a notch more. So I'm gonna grab my knee, and then this right shoulder blade, I'm gonna try to pull out just a little bit to the side. I'm doing that by bending my elbow and kind of drawing that right shoulder blade out with the tiniest bit of pressure here on my knee to keep that steady. Then I'm taking this left shoulder blade and trying to slide it into the place where the right shoulder blade was. So just bringing both shoulder blades as best I can to the right. And then I can let it go and do it again a few times to get a little movement going up there. It also feels nice sometimes just to hold that. So this is the way I play with twists, because I want to anchor the twist in my upper back so that I can release pressure there. Because right now there's a ton of pressure there from me squeezing my shoulder blades into funny places and twisting my spine. But in a second, one more breath, when I let this go, all the pressure goes away. And what I'm left with is this kind of really lovely, warm, slightly tingly deliciousness in my upper back. And even I can feel a little bit of difference in my collarbone, a little difference in the way this kind of first rib is connecting. So you just notice what you feel. So what happens is it helps me release tension from my upper back. That's the net result, which I'm all for. So I'm going to straighten out this left leg, but I'm bringing it out so that both my legs now are in a V. I'm leaving the right one right where it was. I haven't changed that much at all. But you can bring your right foot in closer if you want. I just like to have the V, so that's what I'm going for. I might want a little block under a knee or a little blanket under a knee, just in case if that knee feels a little vulnerable. So I'm going to fold down the center here. And while I'm going, I'm just kind of feeling out all of these little individual pressure points that still are making themselves known from my twist. I'm also not trying to round my back too much. I'm mostly trying to bring my pelvis forward. And if your pelvis doesn't come forward very much, you're not going to move very much. You can round your back, but you don't have to. This is mostly so I can sort of begin to experience the little bit of pressure on this inner thigh. And it's a flavor, right? So it's a flavor of forward bend. I'm coming back out. That's one flavor. So just feel like, how did that leave me? And this kind of interesting sensation that I was getting on this shoulder from the twist is starting to dissipate. So I'm going to take it into a side bend. So I'm going to side bend over this left leg. And do 2 more breaths. And I'm going to come on up. Oh. All right, so I'm going to release this shape all together. We're going to do the other side. So I'm putting the opposite leg in front, sitting up nice and tall, rotating until I feel like my hip wants to come with me, and then I'm just pausing there. And again, my upper back might give me more room in a second, but right now this is where it's landing. If I try to twist more right now, it'll be all coming from my pelvis, and I really want it to come from this musculature in my upper back that prevents me from turning. It's a little bit better. So now I'm gonna slide this left shoulder blade forward and try to bring my right shoulder blade in a bit. I'm gonna release that and then do it again. Right shoulder blade is a lot stickier for me. You might have little spots like that for you too, where there's like, oh, there's an old injury there. It just feels a little different. So now I'm going to hold steady here for a couple breaths. And then as I untwist, I'll notice how much movement I've got and how much release there was. And now I can feel like this side has a little bit more sensation than the other side did. It's actually quite pleasant. So I'm going to fold forward. And again, I'm not trying to round myself or hunch myself forward. I'm just seeing like how far will my pelvis take me. As an opportunity to sort of use the resistance of the pose to broaden out the collarbones, to make a little space through my upper back. If I hunch too much, like it feels, sometimes it feels good to round the back, like that's a nice stretch. If I do it too much, it'll kind of take away this opportunity for me to broaden here. So I'm trying to keep them mostly in the pelvis, this movement forward. Hopefully that made sense. 2 more breaths. I'm a little yoga high right now, so love some endorphins. All right, so I'm taking this into the side bend because things are feeling nice. Take 2 more breaths. And I'm coming out of here. Oh. All right. Now, because I did some asymmetry, I'm gonna, once I get onto my back, it's time for Shavasana. But once I'm onto my back, I'm gonna do some little like happy baby, stuff like that, little kind of nice massagey things for my back. If you would like to, you can get some softer things to make Shavasana more pleasant, like a blanket to either put under your head or over you if you're chilly. I like a pillow under my legs. Oh, so I'm just going to kind of get all those things in place, and then do this little, kind of little half happy baby, half back massagey goodness. Get the knot loosened up in my hair here. Oh. Sometimes it feels nice to do something that's sort of symmetrical right before Shavasana. So if the last pose you do is a little bit asymmetrical, then you can kind of do something on your back that's a little more symmetrical. If you wanted to do a twist on your back, you could do that too. And then just end with like a little back massage. So I'm snuggling my shoulder blades under there. I'm trying to get my legs adjusted just right. Sometimes for me, I love the pillow usually really close to my thigh. Sometimes a little bit less, a little more, depending on the day. What we're looking for is for the low back to feel like it completely relaxes. It doesn't overarch. And then in terms of the head support, mostly for me, this is about making a little softer surface because I have a lumpy skull. But You might need more neck support or just your head held a little higher. Taking a nice big breath and then letting yourself sort of melt into the ground for a few minutes. Shavasana is a pose for our nervous system. We do all the other stuff, all the tweaks, all the stretches, all the movement for everything else. And this pose is just about letting go and relaxing. Make sure you kind of unwind your face and let your eyes and your mouth get really soft. And then just for a few moments, just notice how the breath kind of drops in and fills the body up. And then lightly lifts away. We're going to take a nice big breath. And just let go with a sigh. Start wiggling by just moving the fingers and toes. Just a little jiggle. Stretch them apart. Give them another little movement. And then stretch them apart. And then do similar things with your wrist and ankles. It doesn't matter how you move them, but just give them some kind of rhythmic movement. Sometimes circles feel good, sometimes things that are a little more swishy feel good to me. And then give your whole body a big stretch. So, when it seems like a good idea, you can bring yourself to a seated position. So hopefully this little yin-yang flow was nice for you. Let's take a big breath together. Nice big inhale. Big sigh. Welcome to the rest of your day. Namaste.